What's the difference between you and a piece of furniture? You're both existing things. You're both entities, as the metaphysician or philosopher in general would term it. You both exist, but don't you exist in different ways? Well, that is exactly what Jonas is getting at, again on page 34, when he talks about ontology, and he says that he has to do an ontological inquiry. What he's interested in terms of death, mortality, is our ontology as organisms. Because it's not just as human beings that we have to deal with death, and maybe it's not even primarily as human beings that we have to deal with death. It's as living or beings or organisms, because obviously we are different from the other animals insofar as our awareness of death. Now, maybe that other animals are in some sense aware of death, but we would imagine that human beings are more acutely, most of us at least, aware that we are mortal creatures, aware of the continual possibility and the inevitability of death. But we share the burden of mortality with every living thing. So what he's interested here is the ontology of the organism, that is, the manner of being, the kind of being that this particular being, an organism, a living being, is, and that would be its ontology. Yes, how do we differ from a piece of furniture? He has really interesting things to say on page 34, again in the second column, where he says, our opening observation is that organisms are entities whose being is their own doing. That is to say, that they exist only in virtue of what they do. Now, there's plenty of ways that you and I differ from a piece of furniture or a rock or an atom or a pen or a dish or any other inanimate object. Plenty of ways, but the fundamental way that he wants to point out that all organisms differ from non-organisms is that organisms have to work, continually work, in order to go on being what they are. He goes on later to talk about, every inanimate object can be destroyed, one would imagine. Maybe that's not true, but even the diamond, he says, can be destroyed. But only because of some kind of external force applied to it to destroy it. Now, what's really interesting and maybe tragic about being an organism is that our existence is much more precarious. That is, our existence is much more complicated and tenuous. Once more, our being is our own doing. And so we have to continually do to work to continue being the kind of creatures or the kind of beings that we are. That is not true of the diamond. The diamond is sitting there and will be what it is unless something changes it. But a living organism has to continually work to maintain its own being, to be what it is. And what's the key concept here in the bottom of page 34, at the very end of the second column? What we're really talking about here is metabolism. So we have to look into that